After 40 years of injustice, a Cornish victim of contaminated blood hopes the reaction to the post office scandal will also turn the spotlight onto them.
With the post office, the government, their inquiry's still going on, but the government has turned around and said, we will compensate you. But the contaminated blood victims are still dying, one every 4 days.
Also tonight, fighting food poverty, calls for free school meals to be extended to all children at primaries and secondaries.
Bideford's Harbour is officially recognised for its contributions to maritime history.
And they're utterly beautiful. We see how these fluffy friends are recovering at a specialist centre in Devon.
Good evening. First tonight, in 1984, Kevin Roberts from Cornwall was infected with hepatitis when he was given a contaminated blood product during a tooth extraction. He's just one of thousands of victims of a scandal still waiting for answers and compensation.
According to the Hepatitis C Trust, at least 2,500 people have died after contracting HIV or hepatitis, and at least 27,000 have become seriously ill.
Although he's pleased that the post office scandal is finally under the spotlight, Kevin says infected blood victims must also see proper justice. He's been sharing his story with Charlotte Gay.
It was so painful and I was so weak that I would crawl out of bed onto the floor. It would take me between 20 to 40 minutes to get my clothes on. And then at school, it was just horrendous. Academically, the memory was destroyed. People's names.
This is not a normal response after a 12-year-old has a hospital tooth extraction. But Kevin Roberts has a mild type of haemophilia called von Willebrand disease, and he was given a contaminated blood product which caused his health to spiral.
My father was told that not to worry, it was growing pains. There's nothing wrong with me, it was growing pains. Drink plenty of water, and especially Indian tonic water. It wasn't until I was 18 when I went for blood tests and had 14 test tubes pulled out of me. And I questioned why I had so many test tubes pulled out of me. The doctor turned around and says, don't you know? Know what? You're infected with hepatitis C. You've had A and B. And why we got 14 is because we're going to test you for HIV. We think you might have AIDS. And he said with Hep C, wouldn't worry about HIV for the minute because you've got a 50% chance of dying before the age of 25.
11 years after that tooth operation, a doctor told Kevin he'd beaten the odds and cleared hepatitis C. But for decades, he thought he was alone in this scandal, and it wasn't until the inquiries began before Kevin realised he was part of a community of infected haemophiliacs. Unfortunately, he also had this in common. With many victims who gave evidence, his medical records had completely vanished.
How does it feel to know that that whole raft of proof that you were involved and you were given infected blood has sort of just disappeared?
Our scandal mirrors the post office scandal so much. Missing records, cover-ups, lies, delays, kicking the can down the road for justice and some compensation and the support that we should be having automatically and soon. It's been 40 plus years that people have been dying. There's one of us victims dying every 4 days. With the post office, the government, their inquiry's still going on, but the government has turned around and said, we will compensate you. We will prosecute for you. We will overturn your convictions for you within weeks of the drama. But the contaminated blood victims are still dying one every 4 days with none of those promises.
This advert from 1987 was supposed to be a public health warning, but now it demonstrates the fear and the stigma surrounding the risk of catching AIDS.
Up until the last 5-6 years, I've kept this a secret because I was terrified of how people would think about me and my infections. The best thing I did was meeting my blood family, the other victims, to share the stories, the grief and the sorrow that we all have. And from it, being together, we've become stronger. We are our little campaign group. But what terrifies me is there's less of us. Every day there's less of us. And we need the justice to get this sorted, and it's got to be now.
Kevin Roberts speaking to Charlotte Gay there. It's quite heartbreaking when you hear testimony like that. Let's talk a little bit more about this with our political correspondent, Lucy McDade, who's in Westminster for us. Lucy, as Kevin said, there are genuine parallels between the contaminated blood issue and the post office scandal, isn't there?
Yeah, in the way that the post office is widely seen as the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history, the contaminated blood scandal, the largest treatment disaster in NHS history, and victims of both have died without ever receiving compensation. Many still will. Others, as you saw in Charlotte's report, have suffered far-reaching consequences as a result. Now, the difference between the two is the momentum behind the post office scandal as a result of this ITV drama that forced the government, of course, to make unprecedented decisions last week. And victims of the victims of the contaminated blood scandal are now saying, why on earth can the government not do the same for us and speed up the process of getting compensation? The public inquiry itself has called for the government to do that and extend the scheme to wider family members. The government is saying we expect the report to be out in March from the public inquiry, so we'll make final decision then. Just quickly on the post office scandal, the minister in charge of the post office today said it expects compensation to be paid out by the end of August. Downing Street says by the end of the year. So while promises have been made there's still an awful long way to go.
It really is. OK, Lucy in Westminster, thank you.